Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about human rights and government policy. And welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Policy and Rights, and here on Depictions Media, and I'm Michael. So today we're going to start off with Dr. Bonnie Henry and her last press release with an update on how British Columbia is doing with COVID-19. She also makes a statement about discrimination and how there is a systematic discrimination against different groups. As she will say in there, that some groups came in on a different footing than others. That there is a systematic privilege given to, or priority given to, one group over another, and that we need to do something within our society to bring that to an end, to make sure that everyone is getting equal treatment and there is no discrimination, there is no blame placed against one group or another. Along with that, while we're talking about blame, that there has been a number of statements made that, and you may or may not hear some of these recorded in today, but it's something we need to talk about, is that healthcare workers taking the blame for the spread of COVID-19. These are heroes, in this particular, if we consider this to be a war, that these are our soldiers, and yes, they are going to come covered with the dust from the battle of dealing with the virus, but they are not the major spreaders if we as civilians, or those who are standing by watching, as long as we do the things that we're supposed to do by wearing a mask and washing our hands, making sure that we take the appropriate distance from others, and not inviting others into our homes directly, and keeping our circles close, and ensuring that we're doing all those things that our healthcare workers are actually asking from us. There's a reason why they're asking from us, and when we do those things, the spread of a virus will go down, and we don't need to blame our healthcare workers who are out there trying to keep us healthy, fight the virus, fight other diseases along with this. COVID-19 may be in the foreground right now because we have a called pandemic, but there are other illnesses out there that are at times more deadly, and that COVID-19 is actually placing an interruption to us being able to curb the number of cases, say, of cancer, heart disease, diabetes in certain parts of the world, tuberculosis, depending on where we're looking in on our globe. That maybe it's polio that's going to be in another area. That these diseases are still just as deadly, and maybe even more so deadly than COVID-19 is. It just happens to be that we need to fight this one back so that we can attend to those that have more deadlier conditions. So make sure we're doing everything we can to ensure that COVID-19 doesn't get spread, and that as it takes on different variants and things like that, that we're not spreading them around the world, and we're helping others to live better by doing the things that our healthcare workers are asking from us. So let's stop blaming healthcare workers and let's start helping them by doing what we're supposed to do.
Also want to talk today about the new variants that we have seen here in British Columbia. As you know, there are a number of COVID-19 variants that have arisen around the world that have caused increased concern, and we are paying close attention. We have been screening, both doing random samples of some of the isolates that have arisen, and screening as well on people who have traveled. And we now have 4 confirmed cases of the UK variant in British Columbia, 3 of whom are linked to one specific traveller, and 1 related to an additional traveller. There are no other contacts. We don't believe that this has spread at all from these 4 cases. In addition, in the last day or so, we've also identified our first case of the South African variant of the COVID-19 virus, and this is in a person who has not known to have traveled or to have connection with a traveler. So we are still investigating where this person might have contracted this virus, and that will continue. It is, of course, concerning that we don't know where this arose. However, at the moment, it does not appear to have spread in the community beyond the person that we've identified. Both of these new cases, the 4th UK variant and the South African variant, were identified in people who live in the Vancouver Coastal Health region. As you know, we do have concerns that some of these variants, particularly in the UK, may allow the virus to spread more easily. And that is why it is important for us to continue to monitor and to do the whole genome sequencing that we've been doing in terms of surveillance for these variants. It's also why it is so important for all of us to continue to take those measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19. That means not gathering. It means keeping your contacts small, making sure you're using your protections, following and closely monitoring your personal health, and if you have any symptoms at all of concern, to make sure that you get tested. I have spoken many times before about how we are in different boats, how our experiences are unique through this pandemic, even if we are all in the same storm. Here in British Columbia and around the world, we have far more in common than what separates us when it comes to COVID-19. We are all susceptible to getting ill from this virus, and we all have a choice about our daily activities and how we treat those around us. COVID-19 doesn't discriminate, but systems do. And it has illuminated for us many long-standing inequities in different parts of our society. It has also highlighted how First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples in British Columbia did not come into this pandemic on equal footing. Recently, I have been very saddened and disturbed to hear reports of discrimination and racism that is counter to the kindness and compassion that we expect and have seen in British Columbia from so many people. In particular, members of the Cowichan tribes here on Vancouver Island have been stigmatized and discriminated against as a result of COVID-19. I'm pleased to receive reports that the tribes themselves, First Nations Health Authority, the local island public health teams, as well as many others, have responded quickly and collaboratively to support those who have COVID-19 and who are self-isolating and caring for each other. This type of racism cannot be tolerated, and I stand against this with my colleagues to say this must stop on Vancouver Island and elsewhere. Racism has no place in our society, in our communities here in British Columbia, and we must all take the time to speak up and speak out. The health challenges that come with this virus are difficult enough without also having to face stigma and discrimination from those around us. We must go beyond good intention, and each of us find opportunities to take anti-racist actions. The Northern Health Indigenous Health page and National Collaborating Centre for Indigenous Health have developed a short animated video that I encourage all of us to watch. This video, called Healing in Pandemic Times, speaks to the challenges that Indigenous peoples face and have faced, and the role we all play in helping to address those challenges. It's available on the website of Northern Health, and as also will be available on the BC CDC website, and we'll send out a link to that as well. Please take a few minutes to look at this today. This is one step that each of us can take today towards ending racism and having an inclusive, supportive community that we all want and all need. During this pandemic, our strength as a province has been all of us working together to a common purpose, to do all we can do to keep our loved ones, our communities, and ourselves safe. COVID-19 requires that while we stay apart, we must find ways to safely connect and promote a spirit of unity, compassion, and support. Using your layers of protection helps stop the spread of COVID-19, and your individual efforts and actions can help to stop racism and discrimination. That also needs to start today. COVID-19 is our shared challenge, and one we will only get through by supporting each other. We face these new challenges every day, but there is an end in sight now. No matter where we are in the province, choose unity over division. Take a few minutes to learn about healing in pandemic times. And as always, remember, we will get through this by being kind, being calm, and being safe.
Okay, next up we're going to have a press release from the WHO, the World Health Organization, and they also have a guest speaker from the emergency committee on COVID-19, and that would be Professor Housen, and he's going to have some recommendations on what the emergency team says we should be looking for globally. The emergency team, they met this week in a series of recommendations about COVID-19 outbreak, with almost 2 million deaths and new variants of it appearing in multiple countries. The emergency team emphasized the need for governments to do all they can to curb infections through tried and tested public health measures. Again, we need to listen to the health measures that our healthcare providers are putting out there towards us. And the emergency team has put an emphasis on rolling out the vaccines in a equitable way, which means that that we need to make sure that the most vulnerable people are vaccinated first, and that we are ensuring that that the most vulnerable globally, the most vulnerable countries are also vaccinated at the same time as the richest countries in our world, to make sure that we don't have any more spikes, outbreaks, and things happen as we keep moving here through the pandemic. And the Dr. Tedros is going to quote a couple of of marks in history that we know that if we vaccinate the most vulnerable first, that we can get out of the pandemic faster and move forward with reaching some of our humanitarian goals of reaching out into the cosmos that surrounds us. So let's hear what Dr. Tedros actually has to say, as well as Professor Howson.
Merci beaucoup, Fadila. Shukran. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. The Emergency Committee met this week and made a series of recommendations about the COVID-19 outbreak. It will come as no surprise to you that variants and vaccines were heavily discussed, as well as the current epidemiological situation. Some countries in Europe, Africa, and the Americas are seeing spikes in cases with multiple factors driving transmission risk. This is because we're collectively not succeeding at breaking the chains of transmission at the community level or within households. We need to close the gap between intent and implementation at the country and individual level, because at present there is immense pressure on hospitals and health workers. With almost 2 million deaths and new variants appearing in multiple countries, the Emergency Committee emphasized the need for governments to do all they can to curb infections through tried and tested public health measures. The more the virus is suppressed, the less opportunity it has to mutate. We need to be more efficient than the virus and reach excellence in everything we do. There is only one way out of this storm, and that's to share the tools we have and commit to use them together. The committee called for upgrading national sequencing capacity so that as the virus changes, we can effectively monitor and respond to new challenges. This is a defining moment in the pandemic, and I was pleased that the Emergency Committee put a major emphasis on rolling out COVID-19 vaccines equitably. Health workers are exhausted. Health systems are stretched, and we're seeing supplies of oxygen run dangerously low in some countries. Now is the time we must pull together as common humanity and roll out vaccines to health workers and those at highest risk. This is key to saving lives, protecting health systems, and driving a fair recovery. We have also developed updated guidance about how to best protect people in long-term care facilities and recognize that if they are isolated, it has a profoundly negative impact physically and mentally. The guidance aims to prevent the COVID-19 virus from entering the facilities and ensure our loved ones remain safe. I was really pleased to see refugees in Jordan start to be vaccinated this week. I truly appreciate the approach taken by the Jordanian government to ensure that refugees are not left behind. It's critical this momentum on equitable vaccine rollout continues in the weeks ahead. I came into public health because I wanted to ensure that everyone everywhere has access to quality health services. I know what it's like to come from a continent where not all health services are available. When AIDS drugs first rolled out, they were only available in rich countries until a historic movement of health advocates, civil society, and manufacturers provided a rollout of low-cost antiretroviral drugs. In the H1N1 pandemic, by the time low-income countries received vaccine supply, the pandemic was over. We don't want this to be repeated. COVID-19 vaccines are a major scientific breakthrough, and I know through COVAX that we will distribute them a lot more effectively than in the past. We're working hard, but we must also do more to ensure that vaccines reach those that need them most. I will keep repeating this over and over again during the coming weeks, because, as I said on Monday, I want to see vaccination underway in every country in the next 100 days, so that health workers and those at high risk are protected first. I'm looking forward to the executive board next week and working with manufacturers and countries to ensure that vaccine supply is available and distributed equitably around the world. I now want to turn to the chair of the Emergency Committee, Professor Didier Houssin, to discuss the recommendations from the committee. Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all. The emergency met yesterday, and I want to thank first the members of the committee for their work and contribution to these recommendations. It's a sad anniversary because nearly 1 year ago, the emergency committee recommended and was followed in considering that the public health emergency of international concern. Since that time, as Dr. Tedros said, 90 million people contaminated, nearly 2 million people died. And the committee focused on two things. The first is a worry about the variant which starts circulating in some places in the world. This variant requires a strong and quick effort in research, in collaboration between research teams, in sharing of information, as suggested and mentioned by Dr. Tedros, and also about data sharing. I think we are in a race between the virus, who is going to continue trying to mutate in order to spread more easily, and the humanity which has to try to stop this spreading. And this effort of research needs to be very, very quick and very intense. Fortunately, there is also a good news. Good news is about the vaccine. But this good news should not be transformed in bad news. And we should remember that the objective for 2021 is 20% of the population vaccinated, not only in rich countries, but also in low and middle income countries. And it's extremely important not to transform this good news into a bad news. So, and for the vaccine, of course, some of the recommendations of the emergency committee are about trying to know more about the efficacy of the vaccine, the efficacy against the new variants, etc. I will not go into the detail. I would like to add a final point about the situation in which the world is presently. We are a little bit paralyzed, we are a little bit confused, and clearly the question of travel inside the world, around the world, by air, by road, by sea, needs to be better, perhaps possible and organized. And this is why one of the recommendations of the committee to WHO was to take a strong lead in order to produce a clear guidance and scientifically based guidance about how best to facilitate and permit the circulation of people in a safe manner by air, by sea, and by... I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. These recommendations are very important as the world fights COVID-19. The greater the solidarity we have, the more lives we will save and the quicker we will end this pandemic. Thank you so much again, Professor. I thank you.
Okay, so next up we have Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, making a statement about modeling, vaccines, and housing programs. One of the big things that is happening, especially across Canada, is homelessness is going up, as well as people are being put out of work, companies are closing, and people are losing their homes, and they're prioritizing marginalized groups such as women and children, and indigenous groups and other minorities that may be left out with different housing programs. They're putting billions of dollars into this to attempt to try to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to have a safe and affordable home. It is one of the things that we see housing developments going up in and around us, and then we see the price tag for the home set for a 1-bedroom condominium set at $500,000. The question becomes, who can afford that condominium at $500,000? Even if we consider that soon minimum wage in British Columbia will be close to $20 an hour, who can afford to buy that home? And if it's a young family, they can afford to buy that home, do they have enough space for them and children? It's something we need to look at when we consider affordable housing. What is really affordable, and are we truly building homes that are going to be affordable for especially our young families and our young children to be safe? So let's listen to what Justin Trudeau actually has to say about vaccines, because Pfizer has put up a hold up. They're telling that there's going to be a slowdown. Mr. Trudeau is promising that because of the diversity in how they ordered vaccine doses, that there shouldn't be too much of a slowdown, but there is going to be a slowdown in vaccine programs. So let's listen to what he actually has to say.
Update you all on three key elements of our fight against COVID-19: modeling, testing, and vaccines. Let me start with modeling. This morning, Dr. Tam and Dr. New presented new models that show the potential spread of the virus over the next few weeks. The reality is that right now, hospitalizations are still on the rise in many provinces. While vaccine doses are being delivered every week, we need to keep reducing in-person contacts. For the moment, that's the only way to get these numbers down. Since yesterday, Ontario is now under a stay-at-home order. This is the kind of tough but necessary decision that provincial governments are having to make. I spoke with Premier Ford directly on Wednesday, and I told him, as always, the federal government is here to help. We talked about rapid testing and the role that could play in keeping these numbers down. We also, of course, let him know that federal help is available wherever needed, including and especially for long-term care homes. The outbreaks happening in long-term care homes in Ontario and across the country are not only incredibly concerning, they're also tragic. Our parents and grandparents built this country. They raised us, and they deserve so much better. And it is vital that we continue to get vaccines to vulnerable people as quickly as we can. And that's exactly what we're focused on. But remember, no one is invincible. Even if you're young and healthy, this virus can be dangerous. That's why we all have to keep doing our part. We're also constantly monitoring variants of COVID-19 with governments across the country, including the concerning Brazil variant. We're doing whatever it takes to protect Canadians, including looking at banning certain flights if necessary. Decisions must be based on public health guidance, and as always, our ministers are actively leaning in on this and talking to experts to reach a determination without delay. We will continue to keep Canadians informed of any new decisions we take. To people in Ontario now under the stay-at-home order, I know this isn't how you wanted to start the new year. It probably feels like a deja vu all over again from 2020. This won't last forever. But for now, we have to buckle down. This is our best way through in the coming weeks of winter. We've seen the kinds of impossible choices hospitals in other countries had to face when they become overwhelmed. Deciding who gets an ICU bed and who doesn't, well, that's not where we want to be. So please, keep following public health guidelines and stay safe. Au Québec aussi, c'est important que les continuent de respecter les directives de santé publique pour diminuer le nombre de cas et faire baisser les taux d'hospitalisation. Comme vous le savez, la pandémie a des impacts bien au-delà de juste ceux qui testent positifs. Quand la COVID-19 met trop de pression sur les hôpitaux, c'est tout le système qui en est cas. On apprend tous un nouveau mot, délestage. Des milliers de chirurgies sont en train d'être retardées. Le dépistage de certains cancers est plus lent, ce qui met d'autres vies en danger. Les travailleurs de la santé sont épuisés, en plus de devoir prendre des décisions extrêmement difficiles. Je sais que c'est difficile et que les mesures sont strictes, mais pendant qu'on continue de vacciner les gens vulnérables, il faut absolument casser cette deuxième vague. Depuis le début, notre réponse à la pandémie est basée sur la science et sur les meilleures données possibles. Mais mercredi, pendant la retraite virtuelle du Conseil des ministres, différents experts sont venus faire le point avec nous, dont la Dr Tam, la Dr Niemer, le président de l'Agence de la santé publique du Canada et les deux coprésidents du groupe de travail national sur les vaccins. Ce matin, le premier rapport du comité consultatif d'experts sur les tests et le dépistage a été publié. J'aimerais d'abord remercier les deux coprésidents, Sue Pêche et le Dr Irfan Dalla, ainsi que tous les autres membres du comité. Depuis l'automne, on a distribué plus de 14 millions de tests rapides aux provinces et aux territoires. Le rapport du comité ce matin fait des recommandations pour que ces tests soient utilisés de manière optimale et efficace. Le dépistage dans les lieux à haut risque comme les centres de soins de longue durée, les écoles et les différents milieux de travail est crucial dans notre combat contre la COVID-19. The Testing and Screening Expert Advisory Panel published their first report this morning. In it, they laid out evidence-informed advice on science and policy for COVID-19 testing and screening. The panel has identified 4 priority areas of action to reduce the spread of the virus, protect Canada's most vulnerable, and limit the impact of the disease on the healthcare system and on the economy. So far, we've sent more than 14 million rapid tests to the provinces and territories, with more on the way. Effective testing and screening is key to stopping COVID-19 transmission and limiting outbreaks in long-term care settings, schools, workplaces, and other high-risk locales. We all have to work together to use these rapid tests to slow the spread of the virus. Today, I also want to talk about where we are with vaccines. On Tuesday, I announced that we reached an agreement with Pfizer to buy an additional 20 million doses of their vaccine. Yesterday, Major General Fortin confirmed that as of today, almost 1 million vaccine doses have been delivered to the provinces and territories. We're working day in and day out to get vaccines delivered as quickly as possible. Shipments have largely been ahead of schedule so far, but with an undertaking this historic, it's only to be expected that there will be a few bumps along the way. Earlier this morning, Minister Anand talked about her conversation with Pfizer Canada regarding impacts to vaccine production. Due to work to expand one of the company's manufacturing facilities, deliveries to all countries receiving Pfizer doses made at the European facility will be temporarily reduced, and this includes Canada. I want to be very clear, this does not impact our goal to have enough vaccines available by September for every Canadian who wants one. It will also not change our second quarter goals. Canada must still get ready for the ramp-up phase in Q2. This kind of issue is out of our hands, and that's why we pursued an aggressive procurement strategy in the first place. Canada has one of the most diverse vaccine portfolios in the world, and we secured the largest number of doses per capita of any country. We have 7 bilateral agreements to ensure flexibility when it comes to supply chains. And like I said, this situation with Pfizer is temporary. Cette semaine seulement, on a livré 380 000 doses de vaccins aux provinces et aux territoires et les livraisons se poursuivent. On fait tout ce qu'on peut pour livrer le plus de doses de vaccins possible, le plus rapidement possible. Et à travers ce processus, c'est normal qu'il y ait des imprévus. Ce matin, la ministre Anand a expliqué qu'il y aurait un délai de livraison du vaccin de Pfizer qui aura un impact sur tous les pays qui reçoivent des doses de leur usine de fabrication en Europe, incluant le Canada. Je veux être très clair. Cette nouvelle n'a pas d'impact sur notre but de vacciner tous les Canadiens qui le désirent d'ici septembre prochain. Notre phase accélération du 2e trimestre ne sera pas affectée non plus. C'est une situation hors de notre contrôle, mais on se souvient que c'est pour ça que le Canada est devenu le pays qui a le plus de doses réservées par personne au monde. Et nos ententes avec 7 fabricants et développeurs de vaccins font en sorte qu'on a une marge de manœuvre quant aux chaînes d'approvisionnement. Et d'ici septembre, vous allez tous pouvoir recevoir votre vaccin. I know it's been a tough 11 months. But no matter how much longer this crisis lasts, no matter where you live, we've got your back. Yesterday, a request for additional support was approved by the federal government for Nain in Newfoundland and Labrador. The Canadian Rangers will help with the vaccination effort as many vulnerable and elderly people in the community need help getting to and from the vaccination site. In Ontario, we approved an extension for the Canadian Red Cross until March 31st to continue supporting isolation and recovery centres for temporary foreign workers in the Windsor-Essex region. And in Manitoba, an extension has also been approved so that the Canadian Red Cross can provide general support as well as support to personal care homes until March 31st. Far too many families are facing the heartbreaking realities of what's happening in care homes across the country. This is a crisis we all need to work together on. And as we have from the very beginning, the federal government will always be there when it's needed most. Before I wrap it up for today, I also want to take a minute to talk about housing. With rising homelessness and housing needs, the COVID-19 crisis has made it clear that affordable housing will be key to Canada's recovery. Everyone deserves a safe and affordable place to call home. In September, we announced an investment of $1 billion through the Rapid Housing Initiative. Today, we can announce the details of the over $203 million that was allocated for Toronto. The city will be starting 7 projects to create more than 500 new affordable homes. These will be prioritized for people experiencing homelessness. Of the total number of new homes, 20% will also be prioritized for Indigenous communities and 20% for women and girls. That takes us to nearly half of the new units that will go to people who are especially vulnerable when it comes to housing. Plus tôt cette semaine, le ministre Hussein a aussi annoncé un investissement fédéral supplémentaire de près de 40 millions de dollars pour accroître et étendre les mesures d'urgence afin d'aider les personnes en situation d'itinérance au Québec. Ce financement additionnel provient des fonds que nous avons annoncés en septembre dans le cadre du programme Vers un chez-soi. La COVID-19 a de graves répercussions sur les personnes en situation d'itinérance qui doivent faire face au froid et à toutes sortes de difficultés. Chaque Canadien mérite un chez-soi sûr et abordable et on va continuer de travailler ensemble pour bâtir un Canada inclusif qui ne laisse personne pour compte. Comme toujours, ensemble, on va bâtir un monde meilleur. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, so a little bit about modeling. Modeling is how they actually determined what the spread of the virus is going to look like and determine what measures can be taken to help curb that spread. And without testing, we can't know, we don't have any data to actually put the models together. So testing becomes important, and we have to make sure that it is accurate testing, which means that we need to make sure that the people who are gathering the samples, shall we say, from patients, and those people who are going in to get tested for COVID-19, that the people who are doing gathering the samples so that they can be tested are all doing it the same exact way. It means that there has to be a great deal of training put into how these people proceed to gather the nasal swabs or the blood samples for the rapid tests. It becomes very, very important, and it's something that when we were first started down the path of the pandemic, that some of the training to these people may not have been the best. It is improving. So we need to make sure that first the people who are gathering the samples from the public are doing it all the same way, so that there's accuracy in the results. And then we need to make sure that the actual analysis of those samples is that these people are trained in doing it all the same way, that the tests, that the actual analysis of the samples becomes clear and apparent, so that we can't go back and say, well, maybe this wasn't done right. Was that really an accurate test? We have to ensure that up front, that the testing is done correctly. It becomes very important, or else we have no data. Then our data systems need to be clear and apparent, so that everyone who looks at it, including the general public, can know what is going on in our communities. And some of the data sharing has maybe left some of that out, that we need to make sure that not just the doctors and healthcare workers know what's going on, but we as the general public need to be able to look at a glance and understand what is happening in our community, so that we can act in accordance to the data and to ensure that we are actually following the directions of the scientists to the T. As was brought up by Dr. Tedros, that we need to find excellence in how we are responding as the public to what is going on. And we need to ensure, as Dr. Bonnie Henry said, that we are not just pointing fingers and blaming, that we are actually helping each other with kindness in our actions to ensure that we are all acting together. Solidarity is going to be the key to helping us get through this pandemic, and patience with our scientists to make sure that they can do the testing, put the models together, and that our scientists can deliver to our healthcare workers the vaccines and the medications that we need, and ensure that levels of needed supplies such as oxygen, ventilations, are not running low, and that the supply is met to the demand. Thank you for listening today. You've been listening to Policy and Race here on Victor News Media Radio. I am Michael. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.